My name is Dr. Bradshaw, and this film is intended for my RAD 2612 students. We're on page 3 of structural analysis, and to do page 3 we're talking about scoliosis. And for scoliosis we have two methods for evaluating the scoliosis. The first one is Cobb-Lippmann, and the second one is Risser-Ferguson. Now, Cobb-Lippmann is considered the most universally accepted, which again that means used by other healthcare providers, used in courtroom testimony, depositions, narrative reports, research papers, articles. But you're going to run into Cobb-Lippmann probably more often than you will Risser-Ferguson. But both of these methods are very good methods, and they both use basically the same segments as far as which ones they use. When you're looking at a scoliosis such as this one, and you see of course that this is the primary right here, you always want to start at the apex, and the apex is the one that is most laterally located, which for me I would think would be this one right here, that this segment is the most laterally located, and you want to find what is called the superior extreme segment. Now I apologize, but I went off and left all my rolling rulers at school, but I'm going to use just a straight edge and try to get through this video tonight. Using a rolling ruler, and pretend that I am, you line up with the top or superior vertebral end plate of each segment, and you keep moving your ruler up and realigning and moving up and realigning and moving up. And you see that when you see the ruler goes the other way, that segment is considered out of the scoliosis, and that would make this one the superior extreme segment of the scoliosis. So we will use the superior end plate of the superior extreme segment of the scoliosis to draw our first line. And we're going to do the same thing in the opposite direction, again starting at the apex, working our way down, is that we would use our rolling ruler with inferior vertebral end plates, inferior vertebral end plate, again realign your ruler, realign your ruler, realign your ruler. Now when you see the ruler go the other way, you're out. So that makes that a transitional segment. That makes this one the inferior extreme segment of the scoliosis, and so I will draw the second line for Cobb-Lippmann. Now I have a film where the rest of it is drawn out, which this is difficult to do with a camera right here in front of the view box, and so I'm going to just switch out the film and put the one that already has it drawn on. Okay? And so I just drew this line across here, and I just drew this line across here. And the next line, the third line, is that you're going to draw a line that is perpendicular to this line out on the concave side, and so I drew a line down, and then roll out perpendicular to this second line and draw a line up, and we're going to measure the angle that is right here. Now when you measure the angle that is right there, you'll see that that angle measures about 38 degrees, and so when I use my protractor, base again is over one line. I'm measuring from here to here, and so that is going to be about 38 or 39 degrees right there. So that's how you measure that. So that is Cobb-Lippmann method for scoliosis. Again, start with the apex, work your way up, find the super extreme, start at the apex, work your way down and find the inferior extreme, draw a line, then construct perpendiculars on the concave side and measure the angle created by this. According to our textbook, there are 3 criteria for Cobb-Lippmann. If this angle measures 0 to 20, you will simply observe or watch for scoliosis to increase, just watching to see if you have progression. Now keep in mind that if it is a young child and they happen to go into the growth spurt, that could happen fairly rapidly. And so you want to keep your eyes open, you want to pay attention. If it measures 0 to 20 degrees and it starts increasing at a rate of more than 5 degrees over a 3-month period, then you need to be aware and be paying attention, because a scoliosis can harm a child, can crush their heart and lungs. If this angle measures 20 to 40 degrees, according to our textbook, you would use or suggest that the patient use bracing. That is a garment that is worn outside the body, but it is worn 24/7 except for them to take the bath or the shower and live in it, play in it, sleep in it. But they wear the brace over time, trying to stop the scoliosis from getting any worse. If this angle measures greater than 40 degrees, according to our textbook, that would indicate that there's possibility of necessity of a surgical intervention, such as Harrington rods and or fusion. And so those are the criteria that are laid out by our textbook, which is Yochum Monroe, Essentials of Skeletal Radiology. The second method is Risser-Ferguson. Now Risser-Ferguson, again using the same film, sorry I didn't mean to step in front of the camera, but using the same film, Risser-Ferguson will again use the superior extreme segment and the inferior extreme segment, and I found those the same way by rolling up, and when the ruler goes the other way, you're out. Roll down, when the ruler goes the other way, you're out. Okay? So this segment again would be called the transitional segment of the scoliosis, and this one would be called the inferior extreme. This is called the apex, and this is called the superior extreme. Alright, so the apex, I put an X across the vertebral body. The superior extreme, I put an X across the vertebral body. Inferior extreme, put an X across the vertebral body. Using our straight edge, connect the midpoint of the X to the midpoint of the X and draw this line. Second line, midpoint of this X to midpoint of this X and draw the second line, and I'm measuring the angle right here. So I would use my protractor and I would place the base of my protractor over one of these lines, and I would measure the angle from here to here, which is measuring about 28 degrees. Now that brings up the point. These two numbers, even though it is the same film, those two numbers are not matching. I had 38 on one film and 28 on the other. You should not necessarily expect them to match because they are two different methods. And so it is Cobb-Lippmann was the previous one, and this one is Risser-Ferguson. According to our textbook, Risser-Ferguson does not have numbers that at this point you would say or recommend this or that, but it is a good alternative method for evaluating. And in fact, I usually tell my students that I found that patients understood Risser-Ferguson a little bit better than they understood Cobb-Lippmann, because they realized that when those two lines were closing in on each other, that improvement was occurring, whereas that Cobb-Lippmann is not that obvious for a patient to understand what you're actually measuring. And so I found that for patient education, Risser-Ferguson was probably a little bit easier to make the patient understand than Cobb-Lippmann was. And again, please be aware that they will not necessarily give you the same number when you do Cobb-Lippmann as you do Risser-Ferguson. If you do get the same number, it's really just a coincidence. Alright, this is the end of page 3, and this again is Cobb-Lippmann and Risser-Ferguson, and I hope that you have a good evening.